I got into a conversation about this one time with someone who actually experienced burns on their body. And I was talking about the kind of suffering that you experience in the gym. And that's like intentionally, putting yourself under stress and growth as a result, like, lifting weights and that kind of thing. But then there's another kind of suffering that there's a line that crosses into injury, right? So like, Tim, when you were in track, like you're normally doing your routine, but then at some point, like you broke something, right?
Yeah, I broke my foot doing a drill, but
Right.
I also had pretty bad patellar tendonitis from overwork.
Right. So those are actually a little bit different. I think there's the normal discipline kind of stress that we want to put on ourselves. I think psychologists call that eustress, like good stress that we're supposed to regularly be.
Eustress versus distress.
Versus
right?
distress. And both can be used of the Lord. The Lord wastes nothing. I do think eustress is a necessary component of spiritual growth. I don't know that we always have to face the distress and the injury to grow. I don't think that that's an essential component. But I do think it's oftentimes used by God to teach us different lessons. But Catherine of Aragon once famously said, "None get to God but through trouble." And so it is one of God's tools that he uses to grow us.
Well, I tend to think when you're in a period of suffering, it's in that moment that you recognize I need God and I have to run to him. And so in that way, it is sanctifying. Or maybe if we put it another way, the question was, can you grow in the Christian life without suffering? Well, does all suffering lead to spiritual growth? In the sense that you have a choice when the suffering comes, how you're going to respond to it. And I do think all suffering can produce a spiritual growth, although I like the way that you distinguished, there's a sense that we do hard things that can be hard and suffering to an extent, but we might not always experience just tragedies and distress in the same way. But both can indeed grow us more into Christ-likeness as we trust him and lean into him during those times.
Yeah. C.S. Lewis has a famous quote in his book, The Problem of Pain, where he says that God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks to us in our consciences, but he shouts in our pain. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. And so there is something about suffering that gets our attention that is useful in the Lord's hands.